This is the all-new BMW M2. It might be the smallest full-fat M car you can buy, but it's shaping up to be one of the best performance cars on. Say what you like about BMW designs these days, at least they're not boring. There's always plenty to talk about. And now we get treated to a new M2 that looks like this. It's not pretty in the traditional sense, but it will definitely turn heads, though maybe for the wrong reason. Anyhow, the silhouette is similar to the standard M2 40i Coupe. There's a long flat bonnet, a steeply raked windscreen and a sloping roofline. Okay, so the M2's carbon fibre roof is all new. That's all fairly normal. It's below this though, where things start to get weird. And by weird, I mean very square. The front bumper has gaping intakes cut into it to feed cold air into the engine and brakes, but they aren't sharp and angular like the ones on the old M2. The central intake is a massive rectangle and the ones on each side are perfectly square. Well, almost. It's like BMW bought a new tool that only cuts 90-degree angles and they couldn't wait to use it. Anyway, the kidney grills are quite subtle compared with some recent BMW M cars. Yes, I'm looking at you, XM. But the M2's frameless grille design makes it look like someone's stolen a piece of trim off your brand new BMW. At the side you get some thicker side skirts and a pair of signature door M mirrors with extra aerodynamic flicks. There are also some M2 exclusive alloy wheels that measure 19 inches at the front and 20s at the back. Speaking of the back, you also get a brand new rear bumper with a contrasting black diffuser, which probably doesn't do all that much diffusing. Plus, there's some new exhaust tips. But the M2 has 4 round exhausts just like the M3 and M4. There's no doubt that this is the most aggressive looking 2 Series ever. But do you like the new design? Or maybe you prefer the old M2? I'll put a pinned comment below so you can actually vote on which of those is your favourite, the old M2 or this new one. The previous generation M2 used loads of hand-me-down parts from the old M3 and M4, and this is one of the reasons why it was so good. Thankfully, BMW hasn't changed that recipe for the new version, so it gets lots of bits borrowed. The most important ingredient is the engine. It's a 3-litre twin-turbo straight-six, though in the M2 it makes 460 horsepower. More impressive is that this new M2 makes 550 Nm of torque, so this entry-level M car could be about to upset its bigger brothers. But before I move on, let's have a listen to what this new M2 sounds like. BMW has fitted manual versions with a gear shift assistant that can rev match for when you want to shift down. But you can always switch this off if you fancy doing it yourself. It's much better than the old M2. The new BMW M2 is noticeably larger than the old model though. It's over 11 centimetres longer and almost 2 centimetres wider than the car it's replacing. The left and right side wheels are also set further apart than before. Fortunately, when you make a car bigger, you usually make it heavier. And that's exactly what has happened to the new M2. This new model with a 6-speed manual gearbox weighs 1,700 kilos. Like you're carrying 2 passengers around with you the whole time. Pick an M2 with an 8-speed automatic gearbox and it's even heavier. That car weighs 1,725 kilograms. Despite borrowing loads of parts from other BMW M cars, there's one very important difference between the new M2. You can't get the M2 with xDrive 4-wheel drive. Well, not yet anyway. BMW hasn't actually confirmed if it will make a 4-wheel drive M2, but the latest M2 40i comes with 4-wheel drive as standard, and both the cars use the same basic platform. So there's a chance that BMW might develop an M2 competition, or maybe even an M2 CS with 4-wheel drive and more power. How does all this affect the new M2's performance though? Well, pick a car with a manual gearbox and BMW says it will do 0 to 60 miles an hour in 4.3 seconds. But that's not all. This new M2 is even quicker if you go for the 8-speed automatic gearbox instead. These versions will do 0 to 60 miles an hour in 4.1 seconds. But what about top speed, where 4-wheel drive doesn't really help you? Well, the BMW M2 with the optional driver's pack, which removes the speed limiter, lets it hit 177 miles an hour. BMW has fitted plenty of chassis bracing to the new M2 to make sure it's stiffer than the standard 2 Series Coupe. There are new metal rods connecting the suspension strut towers to the bulkhead, and you get extra metal sheets called shear panels underneath the front and rear subframes. The M2 also has extra metal bracing around the rear windscreen pillars and under the boot floor. The other upgrades include the standard fit M-Spec rear differential and adaptive suspension. These both work in the same way as in the M3 and M4, and you can adjust how they feel when you're driving by switching between the usual Comfort, Sport and Sport Plus modes. The new M2 comes with a huge dual-screen infotainment display that stretches from the driver's side all the way across the centre of the dashboard. It comes with all the usual smartphone mirroring technology you'd expect, and it runs a few M-specific features including the M-Drift Analyzer and M-Lap Timer. But that's not the only sporty upgrade for the new M2. There's plenty of contrasting M-coloured stitching all over the cabin. and you get new heavily bolstered sport seats as standard. But if that's not racy enough for you, you can pay extra for some leather trimmed buckets with carbon backs. These don't just look fancy, they help save almost 11 kilos compared with the standard seats. And you don't have to worry about these fancy seats taking up too much space in the back either. The new M2's wheelbase, which is the distance between the front and rear wheels, is more than 5 centimeters longer than the old M2. You get some pretty serious brakes on the new M2. The front discs measure 380mm across and they're gripped by 6-piston calipers. The rear discs are almost as big. They're 370mm in diameter and come with a single piston floating caliper. These come painted blue as standard, but you can pay a bit extra to get them in red. The M2 comes with the same dual mode braking system as the new M3 and M4 as well. This means you can choose from comfort and sporty braking modes that give you varying amounts of assistance and pedal feel. This means you can easily switch between settings for everyday driving and track driving without having to break out the spanners. The new BMW M2 goes on sale in the UK in May 2023 and will cost from £61,495.